Good afternoon, everyone. Uh, I'm pleased to be here to share with you my experiences in working on bilingual education. But first, let me introduce a little bit about myself and my center. What I'm doing here, I got my PhD in physics education research in America. And before I came back to Vietnam for work, I learned that the Vietnamese government has decided to implement a bilingual program in high schools, that is to teach science subjects in English for some of the top schools in the country. Uh, at that time, I thought, okay, I've studied in the US and I've been a teacher in the US, so I myself can be a physics teacher in English when I came back to Vietnam. But after that, I thought, well, I could do more than that. I could train teachers to do the same job with me. So when I arrived in Vietnam in the summer of 2011, I set up a center called the Natural Science and English Training Center, where we offer courses to train teachers to teach. And why I did that, I will talk about that in my talk about the need. Okay, most of my experience were with public schools, so I'm just talking about public schools. My talk, these are the slices of my talk. I will talk about bilingual education in Vietnam, the successes and challenges, and also how my work fit in the home puzzle. So let me give you an overview of bilingual education in Vietnam. Traditionally, all schools in Vietnam, from kindergarten to graduate school, uses Vietnamese, and English is just an obligatory subject from grade 6. But since the 2000s, some universities started using English as their primary language in teaching and researching, and also English is an obligatory subject since grade 3. But most recently, some high schools started to teach subjects, science subjects, in English as supplement to their regular Vietnamese classes. So that's the situation. The successes that we have is that the proficiency in English of most of the students become very good at English, and it becomes a must for a young generation in Vietnam. And more students are interested in taking the standardized test like the TOEFL, TOEIC, SAT, GRE, GMAT, and A-level IGCSE for their studying abroad. And more students want to prepare themselves for studying abroad. So they put a lot of effort and time in studying not just English, but not just the English language, but also the science in English. But besides that, there are many challenges. On the school side, one of the biggest challenges is selecting a curriculum. Most of the school principal, the state school principal, ask a question when they started doing this, like which textbook to use, which program to follow, which test should I aim my student to. And then the next is an even bigger challenge is to find qualified teachers. Do you know that subject teachers are usually not good at English? I'm talking about Vietnamese teachers. And English teachers cannot teach subjects. So there's a gap. There's a gap between the needs and the qualification of teachers. It is very difficult to find a teacher who are good both at English and the subject matter. And also the policy for teachers in training and in teaching. Schools now do not have a good policy for teachers, and that discourages teachers from improving their English to teach in English. I will mention this later on how teachers come to my center and the support they get from their schools. On the student side, the biggest challenge for the student to take bilingual education is that they have to complete the Vietnamese curriculum, regardless of what their plan after graduating is. Every student have to complete the same curriculum. So, and that takes all of their effort and time. So if even if they want to take subjects in English or in any other languages, they have to use their free time and not in the major time at schools. And the next thing is insufficient English proficiency. As I mentioned earlier, students in public school in Vietnam are required to take English as a major subject since grade 3. But that doesn't mean that they have sufficient English to study subjects when they enter high school or higher. And studying a subject in Vietnamese is already difficult. And studying that in a foreign language is even more challenging. And the next thing is that they do not have a lot of information. I myself are teaching in some of the public schools in Ho Chi Minh City. I'm teaching physics and math in English. And when I ask my students what they took the class for, they just said, I want to study abroad. I said, okay, do you have any plan that what program will you take, what exam would you take to be able to study abroad? They didn't know anything. And they didn't know the requirement of the university, like do they require A-level or SAT or GRE or whatever. They just know that they have to study English in general. And on the teacher side, a teacher in public school in Vietnam have to complete a lot of work at school. And that prevents them from improving their English to meet the requirement for teaching the subjects in English. And they also lack of official training. So far in this city, and I guess in this country, there's no official program for training teachers to teach the subject in English. Recently, just a couple of months ago, I heard that the University of Pedagogy in Ho Chi Minh City, where I'm currently teaching, was selected by the Ministry of Education and Training to offer a program for math teachers coming in this year to prepare them as professional math teachers in English. But that starts this year, and we can't say about the successes of that program so far. But so far, there's no professional development or training courses for teachers to teach the subjects in English. And there's also a lack of design for change. Studying a foreign language is a really challenge for most teachers, and it is the common thinking of most teachers that they just need to be good in their subjects and need not to be good at their at English. I've talked to many math and physics and chemistry teachers about how they improve their English. And they told me that they didn't need that because they are teacher of math or physics or chemistry. And some of the teachers, some of my college, ran to me and asked me for documents, for materials when they need to prepare something, some activities, some outside activities for the classes. And when I handed them the materials in English, they refused to read it because they say, okay, I just need Vietnamese materials. They're not interested in studying a new language. And now I will turn back to my work here. How my job help to promote bilingual education in high school in Vietnam. The goals of this center is to train pre-service teachers and in-service subject teachers to teach the subjects in English. As I mentioned earlier, there's a gap between English teacher cannot teach subject and subject teacher are not good at English. So to be able to conduct bilingual education, we need to have subject teachers which are good at English and English teachers who can teach subjects. So the goal of this center is to train pre-service teacher to teach subjects in English. And also, in the long term, my goal is to improve the English level of subjects teachers in Vietnam. Even for the teachers who are not planning to teach in the bilingual schools, it is important for them to improve their English. And that's why I set up this center. Currently, we have courses for math teachers, physics teachers, chemistry teachers, and biology teachers. These are the textbooks that we used, and the textbooks are prepared by our staff, and I'm the author of the physics, English for Physics teachers textbook. Now, I mentioned the approach of our center. Our approach is to learn English through the medium of subjects. This is in the reverse process as a student. For the student, we want them to learn the subjects through English. But for the teachers, I want them to learn English through the subjects. That is because they already know the subjects. The only thing they need is the English that is used in the subject. So we train them the English, but not the general English, but instead the subject English. For example, when we teach them English grammar, we do not teach them as they can have in other English center, but instead we write the subjects materials and show them the English grammar that is in there. And each course takes 9 months. This is a reasonable time for a Vietnamese subject teacher to become a bilingual teacher. And we have a teaching staff from both Vietnam and other countries. There are two approaches to these courses. First we train the subject teachers. We teach them English, and also we teach the English teacher the subject. So we do both sides. Okay. In this course, we give them the subject-specific vocabulary or the technical terms, and we train them on reading and listening comprehension skill, lesson plan preparation, classroom language, teaching methodology, practice teaching, and teaching for IGCSE, A-level, and SAT exams. So these are what we give to our learners as teachers. And some of the future direction for bilingual education in Vietnam, in my point of view, first and most importantly, is that the policy must go ahead of any change. To implement any change, the policy must go ahead. Currently, the teachers come into my center, they have to spend their own money and time to get trained, and then when they come back to the public school, they teach in English. They teach the subject in English, but they receive the same salary as teaching in Vietnamese. So that's why not many teachers are interested in that kind of activities. Other than that, one of the most important thing that I require from learners in my center is that they have to spend sufficient time on the courses. But in fact, they don't, because they have to complete their regular schoolwork. And that affects the quality of training a lot. The next is to develop intensive courses and professional development workshops led by content specialists to train teachers to teach the subjects in English. By here, I want to mention content specialists. The courses to train subject teachers to teach in English should be led by content specialists instead of English teachers. Because as I mentioned earlier, that the University of Pedagogy in Ho Chi Minh City is preparing for a course, 4-year course, to train pre-service teacher to teach math in English. But they are going to have English teacher to do that course, and I think that's not, in my point of view, that's not a good approach to the thing, because a content specialist should be better than a pure English teacher in training subject teachers. And the next direction is that students should be more aware about the paths in bilingual education that best fit their ability and design. As I talk, students didn't know so much about why they have to study the subjects in English. They just know in general that I want to study abroad, but they didn't know what program to follow, what test to aim for, and therefore they do not have a concrete plan for their studying, and that affects the quality of the study a lot. And that's some of the experience and challenges that I faced during my time working in bilingual education. I've just been working in here for about 1.5 years, so I do not have a lot of experience. So I welcome all of the comments or any ideas from all of the audience. And these are my contact information. Okay, thank you for your attention.